So apparently the church is letting the bearded biker preach again. I'm as surprised as you all are. Some of you are trying to figure out how a guy who looks like he rode here on a Harley and more likely to start a bar fight is here behind this pulpit. Again, I promise you, I asked God the same question. But here we are. The church anthem is No Fear by John Reddick, and it sounds bold. It sounds strong. It sounds like something we should put on t-shirts, some banners, hang them everywhere. But honestly, most of us are singing No Fear while quietly negotiating with it from the inside. Fear doesn't usually kick down the door. It moves in slowly and rearranges the furniture. And I swear it's stealing my socks. Can't prove it, but today isn't about pretending that fear doesn't exist. It's about refusing to let it rule. So let me ask you something, and don't answer fast, because fast answers lie. Where does fear still have a vote in your life? Not the big dramatic fears, the quiet ones that you've made peace with, the fears that tell you not to hope too much, the fears that keep you from asking for prayer, the fears that say, this is as good as it gets. Some of you don't lose your faith. You've just downsized it so fear would stop arguing with you. And I need to hear this as much as everybody else does. What fear has renamed wisdom is what God calls bondage. 2 Timothy 1:7 says, For God has not given us a spirit of fear and timidness, but of power, love, and self-discipline. He didn't give us fear, he gave us power. So if fear is managing your inner world, it didn't come from heaven. Heaven didn't train you to flinch. It didn't train you to expect failure. There's a line from a book that I love. Yes, the book, not the movie, Dune. I'm old, I like the book, leave me alone. But it says, fear is the mind killer. That's not science fiction. To me, that's a diagnosis. Fear doesn't just attack circumstances. It attacks identity. So some of you might remember, I was up here last week preaching just a little bit. You want to talk about fear? I'm going to tell you a story about that week. So I'd worked on that little mini message for quite a few days. I felt good about it. I felt comfortable. I felt confident. Which, if you've walked with God for more than 5 minutes, you know it's about time for something to go sideways. So I'm not great at memorization. My brain remembers random song lyrics from 1990s songs, quotes from random movie of my childhood. But if you ask me to recall a paragraph under pressure, everything locks up, smoke's streaming, you hear the gears grinding, it's not nice. So I typed everything up. I felt all proud of myself, put it up on the back wall like Pastor Steve, professional, organized, responsible. Felt like one of those pastors that had it all together. Put down my guitar, feeling good, feeling confident, like I'm about to crush this for God. You guys are gonna love this. And the slide comes up on the screen. It was tiny. Like, designed for ants, tiny. So you can see I've got my glasses. These are not for fashion. I cannot see, especially distances. That screen is quite a ways away. It looked like it was in a different zip code. I started squinting. I'm like, lean forward. If you watch it back, you can actually look over and see me mutter to Reno, I can't see anything. Like he can magically fix it from the stage. You know what, Reno? Get on that. Wherever you are, fix that. Be able to control it from back here. That's nice. So I did that thing where I could pretend what I'm seeing, hoping it would sharpen, and the words didn't get any bigger. And right there in front of God and everybody, fear showed up. Not a dramatic fear, not a panic attack, the quiet fear that said, this is how you embarrass yourself again. This is how you prove you're a failure. And my heart dropped. My mind went completely blank. I had this very powerful urge to just go, anyways, God bless you, here's the next song, and just start going. The irony isn't lost on me. I'm up here preaching about fear, and it just took over. And that's when I realized something. Fear doesn't wait until you disobey. Fear waits until you're already standing in obedience. And that's when you have to fight back. Fear didn't leave, but it didn't get the wheel. Standing there, my heart racing, my vision really blurry, I realized something very ugly about myself. Part of me still believes that one mistake disqualifies me. That if I do not perform well enough, God will move on to somebody better. And that voice didn't come from that projector. It came from a lifetime of being told, you should know better by now. Fear doesn't show up because I was unprepared. It showed up because I was exposed. Fear hates obedience that puts you in the open. Some of you think that fear means that you've missed God. Sometimes fear means that you finally stopped hiding. Fear didn't start with us. Genesis 3:10 says, he replied, I heard you walking in the garden, so I hid because I was naked and afraid. Adam didn't hide because God left. He hid because his shame convinced him that he didn't belong anymore. God didn't move on. Adam did. And since then, fear has been born in the same place, not in danger, but in disconnect, not in punishment, but in the belief that something is wrong with us. And whether you grew up in church or in chaos, whether your story is dramatic or quiet, every human being knows what it feels like to hide from parts of yourself. You hide your doubts, you hide your failures, you hide your past. You hide the versions of you that you don't feel fit the image. Because somewhere along the way, we all learned the same lesson that Adam did. If I'm fully seen, I might not be accepted. Now, I didn't inherit this confidence that I show up here. Put a guitar in my hand, I feel a lot better, trust me. But I learned to perform it. What I inherited was a voice in my head that told me I was always wrong. Not sometimes, not on bad days, but always. Growing up, mistakes weren't moments, they were verdicts. Proof that something in me was broken. That I was the problem. That if something went wrong, it was because of me. And maybe your voice doesn't sound like mine, but we all have one. Some of us grew up with a voice that says, don't mess up. Be better than this. Why can't you be more like them? Some of us grew up in homes where love felt conditional. Where approval depended on your performance. Where silence meant you were in trouble, so fear didn't have to shout. It didn't have to be a threat. It trained us. Don't try too hard, because if you fail, it'll confirm what everybody already thinks about you. Don't hope too much, because disappointment hurts worse when you believe. Don't let anyone get close enough to see the real you, because if they do, they might decide you're not worth staying for. And some of you learned the same training in different ways. You learned it through divorce. You've learned it through betrayal, through being overlooked. You learned it through being the strong one, the responsible one that had to hold everything together. So now you don't even call it fear, you call it independence. You call it being guarded, being realistic, being low maintenance. But really, it's just fear that learned how to survive. This morning, I remembered this one thing that Pastor Dean had told me, and it stuck with me. After I'd lost my job about a year and a half ago, he looked at me and he said, God has great plans for you, but you have to embrace it, not fight it. And I remember thinking, that's powerful, but also really funny because he literally tried to steal my motorcycle right after he said that. So I'm standing there like, I don't know if I'm supposed to embrace this moment or fight him right now, but That was Pastor Dean. But what hit me was the great plans part. It wasn't the you're fighting it part, because I realized something. A lot of my fear wasn't about being attacked. It was about resisting what God was actually trying to do in me. I wasn't scared of the devil. I was scared of becoming who God said I was. I didn't grow up afraid of the punishment. I grew up being afraid that I was the problem. And that gets wired into us when we're young. Fear doesn't feel like fear. It feels like wisdom, self-control, survival. But survival is a terrible substitute for freedom. So if you didn't learn fear from a dangerous world, you learned it at home. Some of you learned it at school, from being bullied, from being ignored, from being the odd one out. Some of you learned it in your relationships, from being cheated on, from being lied to, from being left where you thought it was forever. So now you don't risk it. You don't open up. You don't trust easily. Not because you're cold, but because you're tired of bleeding. Another fear I've lived with for many years was abandonment. Don't talk about it much, but not the loud kind where people storm out, but the quiet kind. If people really saw what's happening inside, they'd walk away. If they knew the fear that lived in me, they would be scared. And that's where fear makes you edit yourself. You curate yourself. You tone yourself down. You stay agreeable and useful. All right, well, some of you try to. But you stay needed so people won't leave. You become who you think people will keep around, not who you really are. You smile when you're not okay. You say, I'm fine, when you're exhausted and dead inside. You carry everyone's weight, but you never show your own. Fear doesn't always tell you to run. Sometimes it teaches you how to disappear while standing in a crowded room. Another fear I've carried is the one that says people will see me as how I feel on the inside. All the shame, all my brokenness, all my confusion. And if they actually knew me, they decide I wasn't worth their time. Some of you feel the same way. So you hide, you perform, you stay busy. You stay impressive. Even when inside, you feel like a storm ready to break. Some of you aren't afraid of failing. Some of you are afraid of being exposed, which is not exposed as sinful, but exposed as needy, as insecure, unsure, not having it together. So you'd rather look strong than be honest. You'd rather look spiritual than be real with yourself. You'd rather look like, okay, but you're not. Fear isn't born in danger. I think fear is born in shame. Shame always asks the same brutal question. What's wrong with you? Not what's happened to you, not who's hurt you, not what you were taught, but what's wrong with you. Once you believe that, fear doesn't have to chase you. You'll cage it yourself. You'll shrink your dreams. You'll lower your expectations. You'll stay in situations God is calling you out of. You'll avoid the callings that God is inviting you into. It's not because you're lazy. It's not because you don't love God. It's because deep down, you're still trying to prove that you deserve to be here. Some of us are not afraid of failing. We're afraid of proving the lie that we've carried since childhood. That you're too broken to be used. You're too much to be loved. One bad moment away from being abandoned, fear isn't protecting you. It's protecting the lie. And God isn't trying to scare you into obedience. He's trying to heal you from a place where fear is born. So let's talk about what fear lies about. First off, fear lies but it lies intelligently. John 8:4 says, when the devil lies, it is consistent with his character, for he is a liar and the father of all lies. Fear really sounds evil. In your head, it sounds reasonable. Fear lies about your isolation. Isaiah 41:10. Do not be afraid, for I am with you. Do not be discouraged, for I am your God. I am your strength and your help. I am holding you up with my righteous hand. Fear whispers that you're the exemption. So that doesn't apply to you. You're not as good. You can be surrounded by people and still feel abandoned. You can worship loudly and still wonder if God hears you. I'm guilty of that. There's been some times up there, it looks like I have it all together, I'm rocking out, but really in my heart, I'm like, does he even see me right now? Fear specializes in making presence feel like absence. Fear lies about the capacity of God. 2 Corinthians 12:9. My grace is all you need. My power works best in weakness. Fear hears weakness and it calls it a disqualification. It tells you, if you were really called for this, you wouldn't be struggling. But weakness does not repel God. Self-sufficiency does. God isn't drawn to weakness because it's impressive. He's drawn to it because it's honest. Pride doesn't scare God. It shuts the door on him. Your pride is telling God, I got this. But your weakness says, I need you. And only God fills what's empty. He only leads what's already been surrendered. He only empowers what knows it can survive, what knows it can't survive without him. That's why Paul didn't ask for strength. He asked for grace. Because grace doesn't land on people who think they're fine. It rests on those of us who know we're not. Fear doesn't tell you your weakness makes you unusable. Fear does. Wow, see, I'm getting all scared and I'm getting all nervous, and see what happens. Fear tells you that your weakness makes you unusable. God says it makes you available. God isn't limited by your lack. He's limited by your refusal to need help. Fear lies about your worthiness. Romans 8:1 tells us, so now there is no condemnation for those who belong to Jesus Christ. Fear's keeping records of the things that God has erased and forgotten. Condemnation is not a correction. Shame is not holiness. So how do we fight fear? We all do it a little bit differently, but here's some things that might help you out. So Psalms 34:4. I praised the Lord and he answered me. He freed me from all of my fears. So step one, we expose it. 2 Timothy 1:7. For God has not given us a spirit of fear, but of power, love, and self-discipline. So what we do to expose it, we name it. We name that fear that's holding us back, and we drag it into the light. We stop calling that fear wisdom. Fear doesn't announce itself. It doesn't walk into your life saying, I'm fear. It creeps in, dressed as that wisdom. It sounds reasonable. It sounds mature. Sometimes it even sounds spiritual. We don't say, I'm afraid. We say, I'm just being careful. I'm protecting my peace. The big one, I'm just waiting on God. He's trying. But most of the time, it's just, we step away. That's because fear has a great PR agency. They work overtime. They're really good at it. And that fear survives because we keep it unnamed. We keep it vague. We keep it respectable. But the first way you fight fear is to expose it and name it. You drag it into the light of God's presence and stop pretending it's something noble. The real one, he can help us. God isn't afraid. We say, God, I am afraid I'll fail again. Or we say, God, I'm afraid you won't come through. Or God, I'm afraid that I'm not enough. Because fear hates the light. It grows in secrecy and it shrinks when it's spoken about. Paul said God didn't give you this spirit. So if God didn't give it to you, you don't have to keep it. I don't want it. You can't heal what you keep calling wisdom. You can't break what you refuse to name. So the second step, we need to replace the story. Sounds a little vague. We'll get to it. But Psalms 56, 3-4. But when I was afraid, I put my trust in you. I praise God for what he has promised. I trust in God. So why should I be afraid? Every one of us has a narrator in our head. That voice that tells us who we are, what to expect, what is possible. And for most people, that voice isn't kind. It's not generous. It's not even accurate. It says things like, you're behind. You always mess this up. Don't hope. You'll get hurt again. This is as good as it gets. That's fear telling you your story. And it's dangerous to let fear talk like that. The danger is starting to believe it's telling the truth. Look at Jesus in the wilderness. Satan didn't attack him with demons. He attacked him with words. He taunted him. The demons taunted him and teased him, kept saying things like, well, if you're the Son of God. They questioned his identity. They questioned God's plan. And every time Jesus responded in the same way. It is written. He replaced the lie with the truth in real time. Not after the temptation, not after the struggle, but while it's happening. Fear says, you're alone. The truth says, the Lord is with me. Fear says, this is going to end so badly. Truth says, God works all things for good. Fear is going to tell you, you are not enough. But the truth says, God's grace is sufficient. You don't have to wait for fear to stop talking. You just stop letting it be the narrator. Let God be your narrator. Because the loudest voice in your head eventually becomes the truest one to you. And some of you have been letting fear preach for years. Guilty. All right, step 3. Oh, I keep hitting this. I don't want to make too much noise. Step 3, do it afraid and step forward anyways. Joshua 1:9, be strong and courageous. Do not be afraid, for the Lord your God is with you wherever you go. Courage isn't calm. It's obedience with shaking hands. If you've noticed, my hands have been shaking this whole time. My nerves are through the roof, but I'm still stepping into it. Courage feels like walking forward while your chest is tight and your prayers feel thin. It feels like obedience without reassurance. It feels like saying yes, while every voice in your head is screaming no. If you're waiting to feel ready, fear's already won. It's already won. You're never going to step forward. You have to just be afraid and step into it. Courage isn't the absence of fear. It's deciding who gets to speak last. And fear has been talking for way too long. Step 4, we got to anchor it in love. 1 John 4:18 says, perfect love expels all fear. Perfect love. Sounds simple. Fear loses when love speaks louder than the lies. Most fear isn't about danger. It's about belonging. We're afraid we'll be rejected. We're afraid that we're going to be a disappointment. We're afraid we'll be exposed and left behind. And fear says things like, if you fail, you're done. If they really knew you, they'd leave. You have to earn your place with God. But love tells you a different story. Love says, you're already chosen. You're already known. You're already accepted. Before you fix anything, before you overcome it, before you get it right, God's grace is there for you. Fear only works when love feels uncertain. But when you're anchored in love, fear loses its leverage because it can't threaten someone who already belongs. Perfect love doesn't mean fear never shows up. It just means fear does not get to define you. You don't fight fear by trying harder. You fight fear by standing on something deeper than yourself. And that something is this. You are loved by God, not tolerated. Chosen, not managed. You are secure. You're not on probation. Fear collapses when it realizes it's arguing with somebody who is already held in God's love. I think fear's had the microphone long enough today. What do you think? I don't want us just reacting. I want us choosing. I want us to decide. Jesus didn't call the people who had it all figured out. He called the people who are willing to make room for grace, to make room for truth, to make room for Jesus to sit right where your fear has been living rent-free. I want the prayer and worship teams to start coming on up. We're going to open up some space for them today. Pastor Steve is going to come up here and lead us and our hearts to respond together. And as we do that, I want you to know, whatever you've been carrying, whatever fears or doubts have had control over you, it does not get the last word today. Jesus is ready to meet you in this room right now with no fear.